Welcome to the seminar, Practicing Mindfulness in Your School. Hello, I'm Karen McKelvey. I'm the Director of PSI's Professional Development and Prevention Intervention Services. We are so pleased to be providing our partner schools information on this cutting-edge topic of mindfulness. While the concept is not necessarily new, utilizing its practices in schools is evolving rapidly. PSI provides school services in the areas of special education, school psychology, health, English as a second language, prevention, and professional development. And we are working toward educating all our staff in the practice of mindfulness, as well as many other topics. Our presenter today, Karen Heichel, is on the staff at PSI, serving as a supervisor in the Psychology Services Department. She is a graduate of Cleveland State University, earning a master's in clinical psychology and school psychology certification. As a licensed school psychologist for the past 15 years, Ms. Heichel has experience in assessment and intervention. Karen has broadened her work in the field by training in mindfulness practices and incorporating these techniques in school settings. During the presentation, the audience will be electronically muted. However, if you have questions, use that chat function on the right side of your screen to submit your questions. Karen will answer as many as possible in the time allotted near the end. We are recording this presentation for those who couldn't register or attend for the live version. PSI's contact information will be on the last slide. And now, on behalf of all of us at PSI, I am so pleased to present Karen Heichel.
Thank you. I want to say that I am very grateful to be present here with all of you today, and glad to be guiding us through our learning about mindfulness practice. Mindfulness practice is a difficult concept to define because it is very much experiential. So I wanted to start off our time together with an opening practice. So if you can find a comfortable posture and gently close your eyes, and maybe even bring a relaxed half smile to your face, I'd like you to lead you through this practice today. Breathe in and out gently. Hold your attention to your full inhale and your full exhale. Sink your body into your chair and think about the muscles that you can let go. Perhaps the tension in your jaw or above your eyes, or the tension that you hold in your neck and shoulders. Place your hand on your belly and bring your awareness to the rise and fall of your abdomen. With each breath, going in and out, think about relaxation as you breathe in and release as you breathe out. Breathing in, 1, relaxation. Breathing out, thinking release. Breathe in and breathe out. And as you are ready, open your eyes with an increased calmness, focus, and energy for the task that we have ahead of us. So what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is being aware of what you are paying attention to. So just like in the practice that we just experienced, we were really focusing on our breathing. When we are going around our everyday lives and experiencing all the stress that we tend to experience in our day, often our thoughts are scattered. We are often thinking about the things that have happened in the past or the things that might happen in the future. Mindfulness brings us to more of a centered state where we are actually able to focus on the things that are right in front of us, what we are currently experiencing. Mindfulness activities can help calm ourselves. It can help reduce stress. It can help you work skillfully with strong emotions. We're going to talk a little bit later about what effect our emotions have on our automatic response system and the role that mindfulness can play in that. Mindfulness enables us to consciously repattern our brain towards an improved mental, emotional, and physical state. So what do we need to do to practice mindfulness? Well, you need a few skills, and the first one is to be able to recognize when your thoughts are not in the present. Sometimes we catch ourselves doing that throughout the day. We're supposed to be focusing on maybe a work task, for example, a child in school is supposed to be practicing his mathematics, but really we're thinking about all the noises outside the door or the other class coming in from recess. Maybe as we are working in our offices or our school buildings, we're given the task of putting a report together, but we can't keep our mind off our grumbling belly that tells us that it's lunchtime. Keeping our mind focused will help us to be more productive and more in the moment and available to what's in front of us. Lots of times we can use our breath as an anchor for that. If you think about your breath, it's really a connection between your mind and your body. We can physically feel our breath. That's the body part. And when we have an awareness of our breath, that's the mind part. We're making a connection between mind and body. I always like to think about this when I think about mindfulness and what it means in terms of being in the present and remembering that you can't breathe in the past, you can't breathe in the future, but you can breathe in the present. And if you are aware of your present breath, then you know that you really are in the present. So a very formal and technical definition of mindfulness was given, I'm citing here from John Kabat-Zinn. He was one of the neurologists that really got the movement in mindfulness going in the 1970s. And he defines mindfulness as a particular way of paying attention. It's an awareness that emerges through paying attention on purpose, in the present moment, in a non-judgmental way, to the unfolding experience in front of us. There are three primary elements of mindfulness: attitude, attention, and intention. Those words are very close in terms of when we just say them in everyday life, but in mindfulness they have very specific meanings. Attitude, meaning that in mindfulness it incorporates a non-judgmental attitude, an attitude of acceptance, of trust. In mindfulness we are looking to encourage curiosity and kindliness towards others. Attention is the focus of what we're bringing our mental focus to. And then intention, that has to do with, what are our intentions in mindfulness practice? We are intending to be in the present moment. We are intending to be accepting of others. Our intention will be being compassionate towards ourselves. So it's not just paying attention, but it has an attitudinal and a purposeful piece of it. I like this diagram because it kind of lays out those two components of mindfulness: the present time awareness, being alert, having clarity and concentration, and the equanimity, being open, being accepting, and being receptive. Equanimity is a word that first is difficult to say, but can't really be replaced. It means being calm in a state of distress or pain. So mindfulness brings that quality to us. I often think about that as the people who are first responders, that equanimity, that very mindfulness that they have in a crisis situation. So that's kind of a introduction or an attempt to define mindfulness for us. But I know as we look towards practicing mindfulness, it's going to take more than just these good feelings that we talk about in terms of just, being able to be more purposeful or more aware. For us to be able to really bring these to our own lives and into our schools. I know for me as a school psychologist, I want to know what the research says about it. Is this stuff really work? If I'm going to spend my time doing it, I want to know that it has some clout and that it can bring change. And I thought it was really interesting in preparation for this presentation and others on mindfulness to really gather that data. And one of the most interesting pieces I found was Sarah Lazar's presentation on how mindfulness changes the brain. Sarah is a neurologist, not a psychologist, not a psychiatrist, but someone who studies the brain. And I'd like to show a little piece on her experience with mindfulness and her research. And I have to warn you ahead of time, this is a little new technique we're using here, so I'm hoping that the video will come across okay. I would really appreciate if you typed in if you weren't able to get it, if there were any problems with bandwidth and things like that. But I also have the website on YouTube there that you might be able to tune into as well. So we're going to give it a shot.
I was in graduate school. I was a runner, and a friend and I decided that we were going to run the Boston Marathon. And so we started training, and we overtrained, and I developed knee and back problems. So I went to see a physical therapist, and they told me that I had to stop running, and instead I should just stretch. As I was leaving the therapist's office, the physical therapist's office, I saw an ad for a vigorous yoga class that promised not only to promote flexibility, but also to promote strength and cardiorespiratory fitness. So I thought, oh, well, this is a great way that I can stretch, but also remain in shape, and maybe I could even still run the Boston Marathon. So I went to the yoga class, and I really enjoyed it, except for when the teacher would make all sorts of claims, all sorts of medical claims, but also all sorts of, claims about, oh, yes, it'll help you, increase your compassion and open your heart. And it's just like, my eyes would roll, and I think, yeah, I'm here for, to stretch. But what's interesting was that after a couple of weeks, I started noticing some of these changes. I started noticing that I was calmer, and I was better able to handle difficult situations, and that indeed I was feeling more compassionate and open-hearted towards other people, and I was better able to see things from other people's point of view. And I was like, how could this be? How could this be? And I thought, well, maybe it's just a placebo response, right? She told me I was going to feel this, so maybe that's why I was feeling it. So I decided to do a literature search to see if there's any research on this. And lo and behold, there was quite a bit, showing both yoga and meditation are extremely effective for decreasing stress. They're also very good for reducing symptoms associated with numerous diseases, including depression, anxiety, pain, and insomnia. They also, there's a couple of very good studies demonstrating it can actually improve your ability to pay attention. And most interesting, I thought, virtually every study has shown that people are just happier. They report they're more satisfied with their life, and they have a higher quality of life. And so this was interesting to me. And so I decided to switch and start doing this sort of research. And so as a neuroscientist, how could this be happening? How can something as silly as a yoga posture or sitting and watching your breath, how could that lead to all these sorts of different types of changes? So what we know is that whenever you engage in a behavior over and over again, that this can lead to changes in your brain. And this is what's referred to as neuroplasticity. And what this just means is that your brain is plastic and that the neurons can change how they talk to each other with experience. And so and there's a couple of studies demonstrating that you can actually detect this using machines like the MRI machine. The first study was with juggling. They took people who had never ever juggled before and they scanned them. And then they taught them how to juggle and they said, keep practicing for 3 months. Then they brought them back after 3 months and they scanned them a second time. And they found that they could actually detect with the MRI machine changes in the amount of gray matter in the brain of these people in areas that are important for detecting visual motion. So I thought, okay, 3 months, can we detect, can meditation change brain structure too? That's something as, as simple as, juggling. What about meditation? So the first study we did, we recruited a bunch of people from the Boston area, and these were not monks or meditation teachers. These were just average Joes who on average practice meditation about 30 or 40 minutes a day. And we put them in the scanner, and we compared them to a group of people who are demographically matched, but who don't meditate. And what we found is this, that there were indeed several regions of the brain that had more gray matter in the meditators compared to the controls. One of the regions I'm going to point out to you is here in the front of the brain, is an area that's important for working memory and executive decision making. And what was interesting about it was when we actually plotted the data versus their ages. So here in the red squares, that's the controls. And this is something you see actually, it's been well documented that as we get older, not just there, but across most of our cortex, it actually shrinks as we get older. And this is part of the reason why as we get older, it's harder to figure things out and to remember things. And what was interesting was that in this one region, the 50-year-old meditators had the same amount of cortex as the 25-year-olds, suggesting that meditation practice may actually slow down or prevent the natural age-related decline in cortical structure. So now the critics, and there were many critics, said, well, meditators, they're weird. Maybe they're just like that before they started practicing, right? Or a lot of them, they're vegetarians, so maybe it has something to do with their diet or something else with their lifestyle, Couldn't possibly be the meditation, it had something else, right? And to be fair, that could be true. This first study could not address that. So we did a second study. In this study, what we did is we took people who had never meditated before and we put them in the scanner. And then we put them through an 8-week meditation-based stress reduction program where they were told to meditate every day for 30 to 40 minutes. And then we scanned them again at the end of the 8 weeks. And this is what we found. So what you see is that several areas became larger. In this slide, we can see the hippocampus. And in the graph, the controls are in blue and the meditation subjects are in red. And what we see is that the hippocampus, this is the area that's important for learning and memory. It's also important for emotion regulation. And what's interesting is there's less gray matter in this region in people who have depression and PTSD. Another region we identified was the temporal parietal junction, which is here above your ear. It's important for perspective taking and empathy and compassion. And again, these are both functions which people report changing when they start practicing meditation and yoga. Another region we identified was the amygdala. And the amygdala is the fight or flight part of your brain. And here we actually found a decrease in gray matter. And what was interesting was that the change in gray matter was correlated with the change in stress. So the more stress reduction people reported, the smaller the amygdala became. And this was really interesting because it's sort of the opposite and parallel of what some animal studies have shown.
Okay, well, I think you get the idea there. I encourage you to watch the rest of that. But I think that really kind of lays out to you that there's a lot of research here that says that mindfulness practice can actually have a measured effect on the brain and its ability to regulate. At this point, I want to wow you with some more research because there's a lot out of it, a lot of research out there. I was actually kind of surprised when I started researching it myself. I didn't expect to find a whole lot because mindfulness is becoming, it is a newer topic in our country, although in the Eastern world, mindfulness has been around for years and years. And not that it hasn't been here either, but I think we're at this point starting to catch on. And there is a lot of research out there that tells us the effects of mindfulness on the brain. I like Brewer's research that really explains that, you know, our brain has a default mode that it goes into wandering. So unless we are purposely paying attention to a particular thing, our mind will just automatically go to a wandering among lots of different topics and lots of different things that we are perceiving. His research shows that people are actually report more happiness when they are able to keep their brains focused in the moment. There are also lots of bodies of research that link deficits in the self-regulation of brains as attributing to depression, anxiety, attention deficits, and addiction, and that the self-regulation can improve by practice and training. And here's even more research that can point us in the direction that mindfulness has an effect. And I'm just going to, you know, I'll let you investigate more in terms of reading more about the research presented here. But just to highlight, some of the research that has been done shows that improvement in mental health, that mindfulness reduces depression. It increases emotional regulation and self-acceptance. It improves focus and attention. We even have some research out there that says that using mindfulness practices can improve standardized test scores and working memory. That's really important when we think about using mindfulness in schools and increase executive functioning. Mindfulness has made its way into therapeutic practice. Again, starting off with Kabat-Zinn's work out in the with the mindfulness-based stress reduction therapy. Out of that, we've seen a lot of other therapies come around. The cognitive behavioral therapy using mindfulness practice for anxiety and depression, mindfulness practice for addiction, and there's even mindfulness practice for parenting out there. Now, as we move around life, we are generally navigating between trust and mistrust. There are situations that we feel really comfortable with, and then there are times we feel fear. And if we are feeling fear, our body responds automatically. That's our automatic response system. You can think about yourself. When you're fearful or something, how do you respond? And it might change in different situations, but you'll have a tendency to either respond in a fight, a flight, or a freeze response. So you have an event, you have your automatic response system kick in, and then you'll respond with a behavior, fight, flight, or freeze. Practicing mindfulness allows us to put a space between our perceived fear and our reaction. So it becomes not just stimulus react, but becomes a stimulus, a mindful thought, and then a reaction. And we think about how that could help in our everyday life and in schools. Here's a few messages on mindfulness. And mostly, I put this slide in here because I didn't want to forget to say it to you. So mindfulness identifies a thought as a thought, a feeling as a feeling, in a way that is accepting and not judgmental. Mindfulness allows whatever thoughts and feelings that are present in the moment to be in the moment. Mindfulness practices teach us to be more aware of thoughts, feelings, sensations, behavior in the current moment. Mindfulness practices allow us to focus on what is in front of us and not what has happened or what might happen. Mindfulness recognizes that feelings of anxiety, depression, pain are present and relative to this moment, but not predictive of the future. It does not resist uncomfortable feelings. It accepts and allows those feelings in gratitude. So when you are engaged in mindfulness therapies that involve working with depression or anxiety, these concepts would apply. So, for example, a student that is, or a person that is experiencing anxiety would, through mindfulness practice, be able to say, oh, I'm feeling anxious, because we are in the present moment and having an awareness to our body of having those symptoms of anxiety, maybe shakiness or nervousness or sweating. Using mindfulness allows the person to have a feeling of acceptance about that versus having a feeling of, oh, I'm anxious again, I have to make this stop. It puts a whole different feeling on the moment of anxiety. So we'll talk later about how we could apply that in our classrooms. So that was a lot of research on, what mindfulness can do in terms of our own mental being or mental health or our just functioning in the world. But how does that, what's the research look like in terms of what's going on in schools? So I wanted to make sure that we integrated here mindfulness and learning. So a couple pieces on how mindfulness affects learning here. So there was some research done by mindfulness schools out in Oakland, California. They had their students participate in mindfulness practice 4 hours per week over a 6-week period, and statistically measured improvements in paying attention and social compliance. And what does that mean for us in schools is that our kids are more focused on what the teacher is teaching, and we have less behavioral referrals. Just a few more highlights, because I think it's important to really know what's going out there in terms of mindfulness. Mindfulness in schools. Linda Lintieri of CASEL. She works a lot with CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning, has done a lot of research using social emotional learning and mindfulness in schools. In fact, she was a part of some of the monies that Tim Ryan, our congressman, brought to Ohio to use mindfulness in schools. Some of our schools in Youngstown participated in that. And what they found that through social emotional instruction, and you'll see later has a lot of overlap with mindfulness practices, increased standardized test scores by 11 percentage points. I think that's something really to consider. And then other research out there. I wanted to point out some even at the college level. They had some groups of students practice mindfulness compared to some of those students who weren't. And these students that took the GRE, they scored 16 percentile points higher. So again, I think we're talking about something that can have significant impact on our students. We know that learning is changing behavior. You didn't know how to do the math fact, now you do. You didn't know how to tie your shoe, now you do. And behavior impacts learning. Where a student's emotions, attitudes, and actions are going to determine how available they are to learning. So learning and behavior have a correlative relationship. I bring up social emotional learning out in this presentation especially because social emotional learning is not new. This is a concept that most of educators know about, learned in their practicum and practice in schools. Social emotional learning is the process through which children and adults develop the functional skills for life effectiveness. These are skills we all need to handle ourselves, our relationships, to work effectively and ethically. They strengthen social competencies and allow people to connect across race, class, culture, language, gender, identity, sexual orientation, learning needs, and age. This was the definition of social emotional learning put together by Castle. So let's talk a little bit about what the components of social emotional learning are, and then we're going to compare them to the components of mindfulness. The five components of social emotional learning are self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, and relationship skills. So what does that really look like? When we look at self-awareness, that means identifying emotions, an accurate self-perception, recognizing strengths, having a sense of confidence and efficacy. When I key into this definition, I really focus on identifying emotions, because if we are thinking about mindfulness and we're thinking about being in the present, we want to be able to identify the emotions that we're experiencing in that moment. So with a social emotional curriculum, and we are already embedded into what we are teaching, we're already teaching some of these mindfulness concepts. Social awareness, perspective taking, having empathy, appreciating diversity and respecting others. We talked earlier about how mindfulness incorporates the concepts of being non-judgmental and having compassion for others. So we're seeing some connections there. Self-management, impulse control, means having stress management. It means having self-discipline, being self-motivated, being able to set goals, and being organized. We talked about how the mindfulness research shows that mindfulness practice can improve self-regulation. And when we're talking about self-management, there is an underlying concept there of self-regulation. Responsible decision-making. The social emotional curriculums will include teaching ethical responsibility, situational analysis, problem identification, problem solving, and evaluation. In relationship skills, communicating, social engagement, building relationships, working cooperatively, resolving conflict, and how to seek help. When we put those together, we can plainly see that mindfulness enhances the principles of social emotional learning. Social emotional learning, a curriculum, a concept that we've known in education for a long time, being enhanced by the practices of mindfulness. Castle, like one of the leaders of social emotional learning, has even integrated their competencies, the 5 competencies that we just talked about, with mindfulness. So for example, under self-awareness, student self-awareness deepens when enhanced by the mindfulness practices of focusing attention and self-compassion. We talk about self-management. We talked about emotional regulation. I'm not going to read all those for you, but I think it's very interesting how they have been able to be integrated so easily. So when you think about a social emotional learning classroom, your classroom may look like this. You're going to have disciplinary strategies that are developmentally appropriate for students. The teacher talks to students with a focus of encouraging students. Students are provided with opportunities to make decisions. The teacher creates a classroom where the students know that the teacher cares. So just some, behavioral actions of what that might look like. You have the teacher standing at the door and welcoming the students come into the classroom. You have a teacher that's going to be able to focus on giving encouragement as she walks around the classroom as the students are working, and having awareness of where those students are emotionally. Students and teachers have dialogue about the content. I had this one mom tell me a story about what was happening with her daughter. She wanted to be a part of this lunch bunch, and in order to be a part of the lunch bunch, you have to do your homework every day. And the student did her homework every day, and the teacher every day listed the students who were going to the lunch bunch. And one day her name was not on the list. And she knew she did her homework, but her name wasn't on the list. So she went home and she tells her mom, "Mom, my name's not on the lunch bunch list. And I guess I'm out of the lunch bunch club." And the mother said, "Well, can you talk to your teacher about that?" "Oh, no, for some reason I'm off the list. She's put me off the list. I'm off the list." I put that out there because there seemed to be, a lack of this student's confidence in being able to talk to her teacher simply about something as simple as the name being on the list or not. So if we are having an environment that really is supporting dialogue between teachers and students, then we know that we're in an environment where there's social emotional learning going on. Students are actively thinking about their own work. The teachers provide meaningful and challenging work for all students, and the teacher helps develop the students' social emotional skills in conjunction with the curriculum. So how do social emotional learning and mindfulness come together? So we would define mindfulness in this way. If we're thinking about social emotional learning and mindfulness, paying attention to your experience in real time with kindness and curiosity, increasing learning. So if our students can be more present during the day, they will be more engaged in learning. I think that becomes more and more apparent when we are in schools these days working with students. when a student is sitting in your classroom and you are teaching your lesson on nouns and verbs, there's so much more going on in that moment than just nouns and verbs. It's whether I had breakfast this morning, whether my walk to school was intimidating or not, whether whether the family relationships are going well. If we can teach our students to let go of all those other things that are going on in their heads and be present with you as you teach, as you are with them each moment of the day, the potential for learning is much greater. So when we think about social emotional learning, it's an outside in effect. We're thinking about how the classroom environment and the setup of the classroom environment, the philosophies of the classroom environment, the things we just talked about of what a classroom should look like. All those things are working on the outside, working in towards the student. And when we think about mindfulness, the effect comes from the inside of the student out. So the student is more open to experiencing the things that are happening in the classroom. So how do we start bringing mindfulness to our schools? And we start with three things. During the day, you'd want to have a welcoming routine, kind of like the one we did as we started this presentation. It doesn't have to be as entailed as that. It could be just a moment and to bring your attention to the classroom and for your student to bring their attention to where they are in the classroom and where their attention is in the classroom. You'll have experiential learning. Those come from the concepts of social emotional learning that we just talked about. And then having encouraging closure at the end of the day, which we'll experience at the end of this presentation. So what do some of these mindfulness practices look like? Well, the first one we talked a little bit about breathing and being aware of your breath, noticing the sensations of breath, noticing the upward movement and a sense of expansion when we breathe. We talked about how the breath connects the mind and body. We're conscious of not being wanting to control the breath, but bringing awareness to the breath. There are lots of breathing techniques that you can use by one, just being aware. Others involve using a counting method or anchoring words. We use some of those anchoring words as we started with the words bringing in relaxation and letting go with release. Body scan is another technique that we can use easily within our own practice and within our schools. Body scan is noticing an awareness of your body or having an awareness of your body. And there's a guided practice that directs your attention to the sensations in your body and your thoughts. So for an example, you would say, now move your awareness to the top of your head. Breathing in and breathing out, release any tension that you may have in your forehead. Take a few breaths as you relax the muscles around your head and feel the weight of your head. Meditation is another practice that we can use. Meditation is not just sitting still, being silent, which I think a lot of people think that it is. It's an increased awareness and practice in mental focus. So, for example, sit for a moment and think about the feelings you have about being loved by someone very special to you. So when you're meditating, those feelings become more upfront. And you have an awareness of how it feels to be that happy. So meditation may include that as an example. And, this is not meditation, especially if you're just starting off, is not something that you can do easily. And to have some self-compassion in that and saying, recognizing, my mind is wandering somewhere else, and say, that's all right. We're just going to bring my mind back to what I want to focus on. And when you start meditating, you start very short amounts of time, and then you'll be able to increase your time as you practice. Movement is another practice that we can use. It really helps connect mind and body again. These are just simple stretches or positions that connect your breathing, your body awareness, and your mind. The picture shows just a few simple ones, although some of those don't look too simple. But a lot of these are yoga positions. They don't have to technically be yoga positions, but just the feeling of sitting up straight and lifting your hands above your head, and then letting your hands fall forward to touch your toes, and then to stand back up. If you try that, you'll notice your focus has changed. Journaling is another way to practice mindfulness. Writing on a given topic, bringing awareness to your thoughts and feelings. Now we can really focus on certain, whatever intentions that we may want to focus on. So, for example, you may have your students remember a time when you helped someone and have them journal about that. That can lead to some class discussions that will improve the social emotional learning environment. So how to get started in my school? Well, first we want to train our teachers, or that might mean practice mindfulness yourself. You have to know a little bit about what mindfulness is, and being able to practice that. So the first is reaching out to a group of teachers that have an interest in the topic, or who's willing to incorporate that in their classrooms, and do some practice. Scheduling time for mindfulness practice, and you saw through some of the research that it doesn't require a whole lot of time. A little bit of time in the morning as you start your classroom day, maybe a few minutes at the lunch break transition, and then at the end of the day. You want to introduce topics of mindfulness. You want to let the students know, what mindfulness is. You want to practice some breathing techniques. Maybe we'll do that for a few times. And then move to a few sessions on body scanning, then meditation, then movement, and then journaling. I also have down here the mindfulness bell. I want to give you a listen to the mindfulness bell that you can easily incorporate into your classroom. Actually, this is an app I found at the App Store. There's some that are free. I think this one costs $1. But as you begin your mindfulness practice for the day, you would tap your mindfulness bell. So over time, that becomes a signal for the student to become more self-aware, to be able to focus, to be more intentional about their focus. So after time, mindfulness practice integrated with social emotional learning styles and practice become more than sessions in the classroom. They become a way of a classroom environment and a way of life for your students. So I would like to end here with a mindfulness practice, and then we'll open it up for some questions if we have some time. So to end, I'd like you to find that comfortable space again and congratulate yourself because you are now taking some very important time just to relax. This is a time we rarely spend in our busy lives. Once you are in a comfortable position, gently close your eyes, and if you can, bring that half smile back to your face. Now bring your awareness to your breathing. You can feel your belly and chest rise and fall as you breathe. With each breath in and out, silently count to yourself. 1, 2, 3. As you breathe, notice your breath, but don't try to change it in any way. Just notice your breath in and out. Feel your body. You are safe. You are protected. Inhaling and exhaling. Inhaling and exhaling. You relax your whole body. Relax your whole body. Breathing in and breathing out. Your whole body feels weightless, as if you are floating on water or on a fluffy cloud. You have nowhere to be right now, but right here. Relaxing with your breath. No worries, no tension, just breathing in, breathing out. Now move your awareness to the top of your head. Breathing in and out. Release tension you may have in your forehead. Take a few breaths as you relax the muscles around your head and feel the weight of your head. Now breathing in, bring your awareness to your eyes. Allow your eyes to completely relax. And breathing out, release the tension you may have around your eyes. Our eyes bring so much beauty to sight. We are so grateful for our eyes. Now send gratitude to your eyes and let them rest. Now breathing in, bring your awareness to your shoulders. Breathing out, allow your shoulders to completely release and relax. Let all the tension in your shoulders release to the floor and exit your body. Breathing in, sending care to your shoulders. Breathing out, send your shoulders relaxation and peace. Breathing in, bring your awareness to your heart. Breathing out, allow your heart to relax. Our hearts work so hard 24/7, but we forget to recognize our hearts. And so now, send your heart gratitude. With each breath, embrace your heart with kindness and love. Silently thanking your heart for all it does to keep you alive. Take a moment to enjoy this peace and stillness. Let your mind recharge and appreciate you in this moment. When you are ready, I invite you to open your eyes, feeling rejuvenated and present. I hope today provided you with some information about what mindfulness practice is about practicing mindfulness and impact it has on your functioning in life, and how beneficial it can be in practicing mindfulness in the classroom. I'd like to close with this one saying. It's a pretty famous saying, so I think you'll probably recognize it. But after our conversation today on mindfulness, I hope it has a more deeper and impactful meaning for you. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. But today is a gift. That's why we call it the present. And again, thank you for allowing me to be present here with you today.
Thank you so much, Karen. I do say that we have a little bit of time, and we have received a couple of questions. The first one is, Karen, how do I get started with meditation?
I know we talked a little bit about that during the presentation, but meditation is really about purposeful practice. And it starts with just setting some time in your schedule to practice meditation. And it'll be smaller amounts of time at first that will increase over time. So if you were to decide that it was your time for meditation, you would start by focusing on your breath, and then have an intention, a purposeful thought. Focusing on your breath, you would notice things that are happening during your meditation. And afterwards, journal some of those experiences that you had during meditation. Meditation is not easy to do, especially if you're not used to focusing your thoughts. So to remind yourself to be compassionate to yourself during meditation, and when you notice your mind going in a different direction, to bring it back to the moment. And that's how you would get started. Mostly it's taking the time to schedule it in your day. Like we saw in a lot of the research, it's the training and practice that's the important part.
Okay, thank you so much. We really have reached the end of our allotted time. As you can see on the screen there, Certainly, you can arrange to have Karen Heichel do a workshop at your school, working with your staff. And if you have any questions, please contact me, Karen McKelvey, there at my email address. I can both help you with arranging the possibility of a staff training, or beyond that, if you have any other questions that we were unable to answer at this point, send them on to me and I will get them on to Karen Heichel, and I'm sure she will answer them very soon. Once the webinar ends, you will be receiving a survey. If you have watched this for the full hour and you complete the survey and submit it, you will receive a certificate of attendance for 1 hour. Please give us about a week or so before that arrives. It will come via email. We certainly hope you have found this webinar useful, and we hope you will participate in future PSI webinars. Just keep an eye on your email. If you have any questions about anything else, please also contact me, Karen McKelvey, at the email address on your screen. And again, thank you so much for your participation today.